This article is from the Irish Times. Government considering cutting off licence hours, says Varadkar. Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has raised the possibility of alcohol curfews during the current lockdown. Mr Varadkar suggested the current closing hours for off-licence of 10 p.m. could be curtailed. Taoiseach Micheál Martin has already stated the phenomenon of takeaway pints from pubs is not on. It was leading to people gathering and spreading the virus, he added. What did I say back in July with my video Secular Sharia? Only the religion of the state, only the death cult of COVID is permitted now. That's considered something that everybody has to take part in. Islam could easily be seen as a kind of template for the new world that technocrats wish to create, because many Islamic societies are comprised of a tiny percentage of supremely wealthy and powerful monarchs at the top, with the vast majority of people below living in relative poverty and subjugation with no meaningful human rights. Just as an aside, I also found this article from RTE. It's interesting how apparently people can't socially distance when they're drunk. We've already seen food being made a requirement for customers in pubs under the COVID rules, the €9 meal. Could it be that further restrictions will be placed on alcohol consumption in social settings? Who knows how much further this policy could progress in the coming years? It's just interesting to think about. Well, that didn't take too long, did it? Neffet's Tony Holohan recently said the following.
Alcohol has played a significant role in creating circumstances in which, let's say, all of our individual behaviours, and sure any one of us who likes a pint or a glass of wine knows this, when you've had one or two, maybe you just don't keep up the kinds of standard of behaviour that we're advising as well as you should, and you'll hear people talking about circumstances in which alcohol, at the beginning of an evening, but as an evening wears on, people, and this is understandable, so whether that's in pubs, whether that's in indoor settings, alcohol in any of these situations we think has played a role, and I've said on a number of occasions before, this virus loves alcohol. That is a concern for us. This virus loves alcohol. This virus loves alcohol.
This virus loves alcohol. Yes, the virus is a raging alcoholic. Unbelievable. Oh, by the way, aren't people using alcohol to sanitize their hands against the virus? Weird. That's very weird, isn't it? Of course, what he means here by this absolutely staggeringly daft statement that can only be made after a year of heavily propagandizing the Irish public into a collective trance of mass psychosis and stupidity is that it's harder for people to socially distance when they have alcohol in their system. Now, apparently, restrictions are going to be made on off-licence opening hours and pubs and restaurants are to be shut for God only knows how long. This argument was made back in July by UK police. Here's a BBC article on this. Coronavirus, crystal clear, drunk people will not socially distance. But considering pubs, bars, nightclubs and restaurants have been closed for most of the past year, and people have been socialising much less, mostly drinking now at home, please explain to me why now this argument is rearing its head once again. Well, it's clear that this is simply about control and Puritanism, which is a common evolution of all totalitarian ideologies. Obviously, alcoholism has increased dramatically during lockdown. Things like domestic abuse and violence, depression and suicide are all skyrocketing. And in that context, alcohol does not help. But that's not something the government cares about, because the entire point of lockdowns and restrictions is to demoralise and subjugate the populace, drive them into despair and desperation, and make them scream for the vaccine as the so-called solution. So if people are committing suicide, well, that just helps to reduce the population further, doesn't it? The ultimate agenda and aim of the vaccine is to control the people and reduce the world's human population after all. But anyway, at best, for many people, alcohol is a kind of coping mechanism or pressure release valve. It's also one of the few forms of escape from the constant fear-mongering for some people. And I believe that these restrictions on alcohol sales are ultimately a slow and very gradual move towards outright banning of alcohol so that there is no social crutch left for people. Desperate and depressed people may escalate to full-on drug abuse or even suicide. As Paul Joseph Watson said about a similar proposal being made in the UK, the government, in its infinite wisdom, has banned takeaway alcohol sales under this new lockdown, presumably so people who turn to booze to help with severe depression can just go straight to offing themselves. Incredible. Not that I think that people should turn to alcohol for severe depression, but I do understand this is really about leaving people with absolutely no enjoyment at all. They can't even go to the gym to blow off steam. They can't go to the pub for the same reason. It's leaving people with nothing left to enjoy. The slow incremental removal or heavy regulation of alcohol sales and consumption also ensures a more sober populace, and this means people can be kept in a state of vigilance and fear of the virus. Intoxication would actually be a temporary reprieve from that fear, and so that's another reason why we're seeing this move to curb alcohol sales. In addition, alcohol is of course a social drink, and people are less likely to obey the ridiculous anti-human social distancing regulations when they're inebriated. This is why the pub has been closed, to limit social interactions and prevent people from congregating or potentially meeting new people. There's been a war on all public gatherings such as places of worship, pubs, bars, protests, because these are centres for communities in Ireland to come together and network and talk. That's a critical thing, right? The mask literally restricts people's ability to communicate. Unrestricted movement of people is, of course, dangerous to the elites because that's how people learn new information from their friends and neighbours, and it's how they make new friendships and build social trust. The pandemic and the government regulations have been designed to crush political dissent and destroy social trust and a sense of community, compassion and bonding. Also remember that line from the film The Quiet Man about going to the pub to talk a little treason. Many a revolution has been planned in quiet corners of pubs among like-minded folk. Social distancing in social settings is designed to keep the populace apart and keep them afraid of each other. And in tandem with face masks, it prevents people from sharing information, striking up conversations with strangers, and questioning the government. You know, standing next to somebody at the bar, waiting to get a drink, and you strike up a conversation with a stranger, or you nudge somebody on a bus if you were sitting next to them, but you can't sit next to them now. But if you were, you'd say something like, "This is all a load of bollocks, mate, isn't it?" "Yeah, I think it's shit as well." It stops that kind of conversation. Free thought is stifled, and authority is maintained as a result. Ultimately, such alcohol restrictions will never apply to the ruling class, of course. Government ministers will continue to hold booze-fueled private parties because the legislation never applies to them.